It's not just a checklist, certainly. It's very active listening. And it's just not necessarily on the content of a given issue or program. Sometimes you're listening to who are they talking about, not just what are they talking about. Is that someone that I need to go talk to as well? Is that a stakeholder who's really important to this? Sometimes it can be very subtle in terms of what's not spoken in addition to what is spoken. Sometimes you can just think, and you're not required to be Sherlock Holmes here, but if you can just think about why wouldn't they have answered that question, or why did they answer it that way? And again, in thinking through that, really get as much content out of what's not said, reading between the lines.
Just as importantly as that, we're stretching their vision or where they may be going with our conversation. And that's a technique with 3D interviewing that allows us to, in a line of questioning, to take them places maybe they wouldn't go on their own. And if you think about that, with the right approach, we're hearing things from our clients that no one else is hearing. We are understanding in this real-time process, we're creating that value through our line of questioning. And that's what success management truly, if you get to that core element, is about, is we're creating value with our clients, not just discovering value. If you stop and think about that for a moment, that's very powerful, because our client wouldn't necessarily get there unless we help get them there with our questioning and say, if we envisioned it like this, is this what you're thinking? And allows them to open that that window more broadly than they may, and start to talk about what ifs that they wouldn't have if we hadn't been asking those questions.
And we're also, as we're talking with them, I think one error that's made sometimes is we almost push them into speculation. It seems like our objectives should really be understanding the facts from their perspective. And their perspective is important. We want to get their editorial opinion and maybe what they think of others' opinions on the issue, but we don't want to force them to the point of just speculating for the sake of answering our questions. So I think we need to show good judgment in talking with them about how much we really push them for speculation or opinion. When the top performers that I see do this, they really do seem to be in sync with the client. We hear that from some of our most trusted advisor relationship clients. They trust us to represent them at a legislative committee or with the media because they say, you think just like we do. And so it's that being in sync, being able to anticipate the way they think, not just necessarily from the track record, this is the way the DOT always does it, but really understanding what their motivation, what their intent is in their policies and their actions.
Pete Ron obviously comes to mind. Pete brings such tremendous context to our public agency clients, and specifically to MDOT, because of his previous experience being the director or the commissioner for two DOTs, excuse me, not commissioner, the director or secretary for two DOTs. Pete sits down, and really he sits down a lot of times, I'm sure, with clients as a mentor. And so the approach that he takes to 3D interviewing may be a little bit different than those of us who have been in the public agency, the public side of our business, but it's really fun to watch Pete leverage his experience and the positions that he's held to be able to probe in areas and ask questions in a way that those of us who haven't been there, we wouldn't be able to do that.
Another thing that I see sometimes is sometimes there's not unanimous opinion or even unanimous views on the facts among various stakeholders in a given program or project. We need to be careful to not be argumentative about that. If we're talking to the secretary, we shouldn't be saying, well, that's sure not what your bridge engineer thinks about it. But we need to, and that's a very strategic approach of, if the bridge engineer holds one belief and the chief engineer holds another belief, How can we ask those right questions that really get at the complexities of what those issues are? So again, not trying to reveal to something what another stakeholder. We have to be appropriate in our confidentiality, but we should really try to get toward the facts that are really going to be relevant. The other aspect about 3D interviewing is that there's not just a single time when it's effective in working with a client. Sometimes we think about it during the pursuit phase of a particular project, but it can be helpful throughout the life cycle of a project, a program, or our relationship with a client. What the top performers really do, in my opinion, is they run toward these opportunities. There are some people who perhaps are reluctant to go talk with a secretary or a governor or an appropriate department head. And what I see the top performers doing is just the opposite, that they're eager to go in and learn and talk to and just literally practice and get better at this skill, at this ability. So you can practice in the form of doing it yourself. You can also practice in the form of accompanying somebody else who's doing it. Really give them feedback on what they're doing, observe the great things, the way the interviewee responds. We just have to be in that continual learning mode. But the basic 3DI interviewing is such a natural part of what we do that's something that we can all improve on just on a daily basis. I think the skills that are required to be a good 3D interviewer are not real specialized alien skills that people really have to spend a lot of time working on. They're things you can work on every day in the way you deal with your coworkers, in the way you deal with your supervisor, your subordinates, in the way you deal with your family. It really just has to do with really interested, active listening, showing that compassion, empathy, concern, and being able to, in real time, strategically respond in a way that has value. So it's not a magic, I think practice, like most things, might be the most important thing to do it. Sometimes that's painful, but every time you learn at doing it.
What a powerful message to be able to sit down with your office and your staff, your team, and let them know that whether it's Ken Graham, division presidents, those in leadership across our firm, this is how it's done. This is how they approach it. Anytime you're going to invest, a client's going to invest time with you, that's an important investment for them. How do we maximize that? We maximize that through preparation, through practice, and through really focusing on making sure that we're creating the most value for them out of that time.
3D interviewing is really such a fundamental activity. It's such a fundamental skill. Beyond that, it's really a fundamental mindset or perspective that we really expect out of our HNTB leaders. I think you can see it captured in the vision. You can see it captured in the strategic plan. And I think you can see it captured in just the everyday behavior that we expect out of our leaders. If you look at our vision, in our doctrine, client focus, clearly 3D interviewing is key to that. In our philosophy, uncover what is really important in any situation. I don't think there's anything more powerful than 3D interviewing in doing that. And then build relationships.
It's really, to me, impactful to be in meetings with the highest leadership of our firm and to have them spend most of their time listening. It sends a strong message to me that listening skill is not just something that they're exercising when they're with clients. They're also exercising it when they're internally. It's just part of who they are.
Sometimes I think some of our leaders think, well, how can I carve out? Sure, I'd love to go talk to the secretary, but when do I carve out time to do it? And everybody's schedule's busy, and these can be hard things to schedule with these high leaders of the client organization. Leaders have to find the time, to develop the time to do that. Perhaps that's through developing their staff, through delegation of some of their more routine activities to others as developmental efforts. But there's nothing more important than doing this. We want our leaders, our office leaders, our client service leaders to be out interacting with clients, with other stakeholders in the community. There's nothing more important that they can do as the face of HNTB in the community than being out conducting these kind of high-level strategic dialogues with members of the community and the client organization. They have to find the time to be able to do that.